Hello, we'd like to welcome you to the Highland City Planning Commission meeting today for February 28th. And we would like to begin with a prayer, with an invocation. Chris, would you please offer that for us?
Heavenly Father, we are very grateful for this beautiful day and that we're lucky enough to live in such a peaceful part of the world. We thank Thee very much that we are lucky enough to live in a beautiful city with laws and people that try hard to do good things. Please help us tonight to make good choices and to do the very best that we can that will help our city and the people that live in there to feel of Thy presence. In the name of Jesus Christ, amen.
Amen. Thank you. And Trent's going to give us the the Pledge of Allegiance. Tracy.
Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you. Do we have any unscheduled appearances that we need to address? Okay, welcome. It's fun to have someone here.
Spread out.
Yeah, get comfortable. All right, let's see. So, I was just trying to, the approval, we need to talk about the approval of the meeting minutes. Wondering if anyone would like to approve those minutes and second them.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes of the 24th of January, 2023.
Second.
Thank you. Do we all need to vote? All right. Do you? Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. All right. We're going to go to item number 3, public hearing ordinance tax amendment about signs, and we're going to ask Kelly to present that to us. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner Moore, and the other planning commissioners for being here. I will do my best to be as brief as I can be. Overall, staff recommendation, this is an item that will require a public hearing after I present. And then we as staff are just recommending that the Planning Commission propose any changes or recommendations to the council that you may feel necessary, and recommend approval of the proposed amendment to the sign ordinance. This did go to the council on January 3rd, not this entire amendment, but just explaining why we were doing an amendment and any preliminary opinions that they may have. We went through a couple of the like permitted and prohibited signs, and they wanted to stay consistent with what's in existing code, but also to consider regulations that are appropriate but still provide business support. Background, the reason why this is coming up and why I've spent a good chunk of time drafting this ordinance is because we had received a couple complaints regarding the excessive signage with the Ridgeview development, all their development promotional signage, model home, directional signage, everything that they have out there. And so I had been working with each of the individual builders in Ridgeview and trying to work with them to come into compliance, realized that it really wasn't possible for them to come into compliance with the setbacks. Well, really, main concern was the setback regulations that we had in existing code, where we have 30-foot setbacks and they have existing fences where it wouldn't even be possible to be 30 feet setback with how close the structures are to the property lines. And so the goal was to address it, make it possible for them to comply with the ordinance. And in doing that research, came across the Reed versus Town of Gilbert Supreme Court case, which made us realize that technically the way that we were enforcing code did not comply with federal law. This court case basically came out with the fact that sign regulations cannot be content-based. And so currently in our temporary sign ordinance, we base all of the setbacks and sign types and everything off of what is on it or the content. And so in redrafting this ordinance, we had to take a completely different approach. And I'll go through it briefly, but we basically shift it to property type that the sign is on rather than what is on the sign. So quickly going through the amendment, first we basically just clarify that for home occupations, there's no signage allowed. That's how it is currently, but we just wanted to make a clarification in our sign code. And then the council also brought up a concern of truth in advertising on signage, and so Rob included a couple of sentences to basically say that signs have to be directly related to the location that the sign is placed on, and that the signs shall also comply with all applicable truth in advertising laws. Just to go over the most popular or our permitted sign types, just so you understand, these pictures are from our definitions section in our signs, in our sign ordinance. That's why they look old and aren't very cute, but that works. Our A-frame, it's also known as like sandwich signs. They're generally permitted in both residential and commercial zones. And then we have our freestanding signs permitted in both residential and commercial zones. Our banner signs are only permitted in a few places. In our proposed ordinance, they're permitted on residential vacant properties that are larger than 5 acres. They're also permitted as off-premise directional signage when it's integrated into a permitted fence structure. And I'll go into that in a second. And then also would be allowed on public property for public purposes. And so if we had Highland Fling or something like that type of signage, we would allow banner signs. And then these also are permitted for temporary signs in commercial zones currently.
Can I ask a question really quick?
Okay.
With the new trend, especially during COVID, that happened where people are putting up signs for birthdays, celebrations, anniversaries, things like that, where they have these letter things with balloons and stuff all over. We have no problem with that, correct?
So technically,
It's
like
temporary.
in these temporary signs, if they're being posted on single-family lots, we do have our max size that we're allowing. We did include a clause that basically states if the signage is less than 6 square feet, it doesn't require any permitting. We do still expect them to meet our sign ordinance, but they don't have to do anything through the city in order to put it on. We made that exception mainly for, similar signage, also for like student of the year signs that the school
Right.
district puts
Happy
up.
graduation,
Yeah,
birthdays, stuff like that that are done. We're not having any problems with those as long as they're temporary and taken off and they're on the private property.
And they meet the sign, like as in,
Because I don't
and they
think any
meet
of
the
them are
maximum
only 6
size.
feet.
Because if we don't allow 32 square foot
Okay.
happy birthday signs on a front yard, we still have our maximum size requirements and height requirements. Obviously, we're only going to be made aware of them if someone complains, and if they complain, we would reach out to them, which it was probably going to be removed that day anyway. But it's just, it gives the city a way to enforce, really, is the purpose of this.
Thank you.
This is the other sign type, and this is to y'all's discretion, the council's discretion. So the blade and feather signs, they're not currently permitted in our code, but came across the fact that we do indeed have these as the city for our Highland Fling. So basically, the proposed amendment allows the city to put them on for city uses onto public property. If you don't feel comfortable with that, you can propose to change that. But that's just how it is in this proposed amendment, is allowing it for city uses on city property.
I have just a quick question. When you say public property, does that apply to schools?
Oh, it would be, yeah, then yes, it would
It
be.
makes sense. I mean, you see banners in schools and things, whatever, and I'm assuming that
Yeah.
inclusive of this.
Schools are public property.
Well, they are unless they're not, right? But in
Unless-
Unless it's a private school, I
Oakland
guess.
School
And I
District
don't
or
think we have any private schools in Highland, do we? I mean,
Mountainville, oh no, that's Alpine.
it's not-
They're all public schools, right?
Okay. Just curious.
Yeah, good point. These literally copied and pasted from our code for what the prohibited signage is. The only change that we are proposing to this is just as far as off-premise signage goes. When we talked to the city council, they wanted to allow directional signage. Obviously, with model homes, we do have a lot of, or see a lot of directional signage out there, and in the higher density projects, it is more difficult for people to just know where the model home is. And so they wanted to allow directional signage. We did have a max of 6 square feet for that signage and setbacks and needs to be on private property, et cetera. But we are continuing to prohibit off-premise signs. And so any sign that is up has to be related to that property. And so in residential zones, you have like real estate signs or for sale, for rent, et cetera. But we also don't allow commercial signage in residential zones. That's how we are now. That's how the proposed amendment is. And so it's just pointing out we allow only directional off-premise signage. Otherwise, other than that, we don't allow any other off-premise signage. And if you have any questions about these, I looked most of them up on
Just a quick question.
Google.
I was reading over the one about the agricultural signs,
Yes.
and we do have several fruit stands, honey stands, things like that. So with what they're currently doing, is it all in compliance?
So that's not, those honey and fruit stands, those aren't considered agricultural signage. Technically, this is for, if you didn't know, we do have an agricultural zone. It's our A1 zone, and there are 2 parcels in the city that are zoned agricultural. And so that's what this would be applicable to. Again, off-premise signage is prohibited, so it would only be applicable to that zone. The ones you're talking about specifically, I assume you're talking about off of 6,000 and Timp Highway. That one has a temporary use permit. They are only allowed to sell, it's certain types of produce that are, that's regulated by the health and something.
Because at different times, I
Basically-
live right by it, and at different times, there's sculptures.
Right.
Different times
Currently, so
there's-
they're not allowed to do the sculptures and the flags and all that kind of
And
stuff.
why-
All they can sell is the pine nuts and the honey. We did have a lot of code compliance complaints last year, and so we did bring them into compliance, and they should be into compliance.
Well, and
From now on.
then there's that sugar
Sugar beets or
Sugar-
what? Or what is that one?
Sweet Farms or something that has their produce stand there, and that's fine too, correct?
Yes, that would be, as long as they got their
So-
temporary use permit.
If they're doing the blade signs or just the square signs or something in just that area, that's,
They wouldn't be able to have blade signs.
okay.
Yeah, because the only allowance that we're allowing for the blade signs is on the public property, and that is not public property. Okay, I'm gonna,
Is it private property that they're leasing? What is that property?
it is private property,
So because
yeah.
it's private property, they can have different, okay, that's what I was
Yeah,
supposed
and our temporary uses in residential zones are only allowed on intersections of arterial and collector streets. So
Which
there are
that
only
is.
specific areas in Highland that you can see those, but it's specifically these produce stands. Before, I know that they were selling a lot of other things, and
Go
again,
Trump.
like I said, it did go through code compliance, and
Okay.
we were very well aware of it, I'll say
Okay,
that.
I was just curious. Thank you.
Okay, organization-wise, just want to explain this really quickly. We split it into, we have residential zones and commercial zones. Under residential, we have permanent signs and temporary signs. And commercial, same thing, permanent signs and temporary signs. So in residential zones, the only permanent signage that we allow on a single-family lot are the nameplates and address markers. If you're familiar, obviously, you have your address that's placed on the house. Everyone's going to have it, and we allow it. Just wanted to call it out. Nameplates, if you've seen them, similar to in Bull River, when they have super long driveways, they'll have the little family name on the front or on their mailbox or something, so people know before they drive their 400-foot driveway. But we also are allowing that. We're just putting a max of 2 per lot, so you're not having their name 10 times on the property, which you'd think no one would do, but you never know, so we just put a max on here. Also, for subdivisions, monument signage and sign integrated into a permitted fence structure. If you know, a lot of the subdivisions have these subdivision signs that have the subdivision name on it. We didn't put a max size or location or anything on that just because those are reviewed during the development review process. Temporary signs, like I said, we based it off of property type rather than being content-based. And so these first three are vacant properties, and then we have it divided out into different property sizes, less than an acre, 1 to 5 acres, and greater than 5 acres. You see the sizes get greater, the larger the property is. As far as sign removal, all these temporary signs are held to the same standard where they have to be removed within 3 days of the use, promotion, or sale no longer being applicable to the sign. We give them 3 days to remove it. And then we're allowing one of each sign type per road frontage. And so if you have a property that's on a corner lot that they're selling, and we allow freestanding and A-frame, basically they would be allowed to have one freestanding and one A-frame on this side, on, say, North County Boulevard, and then one freestanding and one A-frame on Canal Boulevard, if that's the intersection that they're at. Okay, that's basically it. We don't allow it in any right-of-way. We do have the setbacks based off of however tall the sign is, and so it's a 1-to-1 ratio. If it's 6 feet tall, it has to be 6 feet away from the right-of-way, and so on. Okay, and then this is on already constructed or single-family lots and multifamily units. Here are our max sizes, and then we allow same thing, freestanding A-frame, and then same 72 hours, same number of signs. Then we have public property. We have as approved by zoning administrator, that's what we do now. All the arts council signage or community events that you see, I have to sign off on those. We actually have little stickers that get put on each of these signs with the date that it's going to be removed.
That one you have blade signs.
Yes.
Okay.
And then the off-site directional signage, like I said, we have that max of 6 square feet. This one, we reduced to 24 hours after, just because it's directional signage, and we don't want people being directed to something that doesn't exist longer than we need it to be. Other thing to call out, they must receive written permission from the private property owner if they're being allowed to put directional signage on their property. Okay, like I said earlier, if it's less than 6 square feet, they don't have to get a permit or pay a fee or anything, but they're still expected to meet our sign ordinance. And then, like we already discussed, the temporary agricultural signs have that same exemption, but still expected to meet this requirement. And that's just current code. We didn't put that in there new. I assume it was just because Highland likes to support agricultural uses, and so it was just giving them an exemption. Commercial zones, permanent signs, we didn't make any changes to this really. The permanent signs are the signs that are going through our building department and zoning department for their wall signs, monument signs, et cetera. And then the temporary signs, rather than basing it on property type, we just divided it into sign type, and then kept similar maximum sizes as our existing. And then we just allow one per business for the temporary signs, so we don't have one business that has 4 different discount sale signs in front of their business. We did add these 2 definitions that we were missing for address marker and then the blade sign. And then we also added some clarification to off-premise signage. And that is it. I'm so sorry that was so long. If y'all have any questions. Also, the words are super small, and so I have the staff report here just in case you want to look at it closer, and I can zoom in a little bit. But this also does require a public hearing, so I just wanted to remind you of that.
Thank you very much, Kelly, for presenting that to us. We want to open this up for a public hearing. If anyone has public comment, please come to the microphone, turn it on if it's not, by pushing the button and state your name and address, and then you have 3 minutes.
Oh, it should be on when you turn on the green light, so looks like it was already. Press on it one more time. There you go.
Well, it looked like it was on, it wasn't on. I'm Debbie Mon, and I live in Highland, 10917 North, 5920 West, a couple blocks that way. I am, the signage thing, which I kind of like all that, actually, but there's, I think it's Mark Thompson's property, probably, that's 6,000 West and Highland, whatever, Timpanogos Highway. And now, so that would be private property. So can he have anything there?
No, our temporary uses are limited to those like produce stands
Yeah.
in residential
And the-
zones.
and the
That's
pine nuts?
the only thing that he would be able to have there.
Are the signs supposed to relate only to what they're selling, or can they put any sign they want up and flag? And I think you all know what I'm talking about, so.
That's what we're clarifying. in the
Okay,
code
well, that's
right
what, yeah,
now.
well, it didn't get too clear for me yet, so I thought I'd kind of get specific on
Okay.
that. I mean, it could be an example of other things too, but that's the one I see every day, so. Okay, just wondering, because that's, okay, thank you.
Thank you. Kelly, did you want to, so basically some of the other, to be more clear, we're talking about political signs, flags, banners that are being sold instead of just the produce and the honey and the things. Is that what we were talking about?
Right, so technically, like this private property owner outside of the produce stand or temporary use that is permitted can put up signs. Like that would be his right to meet the single-family lot requirements to put up signs with that. But if the temporary use has signs specific to the produce stand, it would have to be about the produce stand, if that makes sense.
And it doesn't seem to be the produce stand, it is the other vendor.
Well,
So-
it
Which
seems
shouldn't
the
be
produce
there.
stand person is, I mean,
I
it's
know
with
the
his
vendors, it's
stuff.
like- it's like-
So I don't know if that's, if Mark says it's okay, if that's okay, because it's his property, or if that's because it's unrelated totally to what he's, the produce that we're allowing,
Right.
if that's something that he shouldn't be doing.
Yeah, so just to clarify and be very specific about it, so you've got pine nuts and honey,
That's the
and,
advertised.
and then separately you have all of these banners and flags and all this sort
At
of
different
political
times, shirts. and-
rhetoric and whatnot showing. So if he has a temporary permitted use to sell the flags, then it's acceptable.
Correct.
But if, when we call in and complain and all that, in theory, the compliance individual would look at it and say, well, actually, you can sell A, B, and C. You're advertising D and E. Pretty pleased with the cherry on top. Stops doing
Yes.
D and E. So that's how it should work.
Okay, so in other words, he shouldn't have those things up except what he's selling. I mean, if he's allowed to sell produce or honey and pine nuts, that's, I mean, that, because the other thing, wearables are not produce, Is it, like, did we say it was okay? Did we give him a permit to sell T-shirts or whatever else? I haven't been
Yeah,
over
I
there.
don't know the answer to that. The answer is specific in his temporary permitted use that is granted. So if he's come into the city and has made an application and said, I want to sell, flying
Right.
pig blankets or whatever they are, then he may do that.
Okay,
But
right.
if not, he really should not be doing that.
I didn't know if you guys knew if he had a permit, so that's all I was asking.
We don't personally, because we don't investigate each one of those.
Right,
But the
fair
city
enough.
does.
Okay.
They do now specific to the honey and pine nuts, and it's been made very clear that they cannot sell anything other than
Or
that
advertise anything else? Because that's, could be two different
I actually
things.
don't know if that's been made clear.
Hate to
Sorry, I
throw
also
this
just
one at
wanted
you
to
right
pull
off
up,
the
this is that code section that makes it very clear. Oh, yeah.
We redefined off-premise includes anything from a billboard, because that's a sign somewhere else advertising something that's located far away, to we had a question of selling a model home that you don't actually sell in Highland could be an off-premise sign. If you say, we sell homes in this range, and you actually can't find that home in Highland, that's an off-premise sign. So we tried to beef up the definition to make it clear. Anything that you're trying to do, if you have an advertisement for it and it's not there, that's considered off-premise. So
Like, we do windows, we do,
yes.
things like that,
Right,
and
oh,
they're
yeah,
tacked
general,
all over
general,
the
yeah.
So
Highland
those,
City.
we-
Those
we're,
would be
we're clarifying that
prohibited.
definition with this so we can have a little more clarity moving forward and how to handle that.
Okay, so, I'm sorry, the political, and that's the thing with me, and I don't care right or left, I'm not going there, it's just the whole idea of the political signs, is that, it has nothing to do with honey and pine nuts, but there's flags and signs and all kinds, to me, it looks trashy, actually, too, and it doesn't matter, again, I'm not going
We
with...
don't regulate, if they have the permit to sell it, they're fine. And we can't regulate
The city's...
anything of what that thing may say on it.
Right.
So, Rob, if I may say something, and please correct me if I'm answering this incorrectly. My understanding is if I see something that annoys me or I don't think it's appropriate, the safest thing to do is just to ring the city and to say, I
They're
think
allowed.
this looks awful, it's just cosmetically unattractive or whatever the reason is that you don't like it. The compliance folks will actually pull their permit and they'll look at it and say, oh, you know what? When they applied for it, they did actually request permission to sell flags
No.
and things, and we approved it or not. And
Yeah.
if it was not approved, then the compliance folks will actually approach that person and say, hey, please don't do this anymore.
Yeah,
That's the best thing to do.
okay. And then truth in advertising, is that covered under? I thought I saw something up here
Yes,
about
it
truth.
is.
So we've got, yeah, okay, so
All right.
that's, thank you.
No problem. This right here.
We appreciate that.
I also just wanted to make clear, I know we talked about this a little before the meeting, but as far as political signs, like during election season and stuff, that is not being touched. Basically, in code, they're not allowed on public property or park strips in front of public property, but they are allowed on private property with the private property owner's permission, and park strips in front of private property, again, with the private property owner's permission. And that's consistent with the
And
change
I know we
that
have
was
some
made a couple
problem
years
with
ago.
that in the ballpark by the Strasburg Chapel, because it has a chain link fence, and everyone thinks that that's their free billboard. So, but that would be private property to the LDS Church, correct?
Yes.
So
We
that
get a
is
fun
something else.
collection of signs back there.
Yeah.
When they go out and they pull them down, so
That's true.
we get them
Yeah,
every year.
okay.
And when it comes to the political season signs, are there date constraints on that, or is that unregulated as to
No,
time?
because that's been deemed unconstitutional.
Okay, all right.
It's mostly, the theory behind it, a lot of cities did it, we had it, and then basically someone said, can you promote your sports team year-round? If so, why can you not promote your candidate year-round? And distinguishing between those two is regulating the content of speech, and we don't do that as the government. So it's a very common regulation where you say you have to take it down within a week after an election, and then courts have said, no, you can't do that, so.
So we did change that, especially, except we made the provision that if it is a flyaway sign, and it
Yes.
is no longer where it's supposed to be, or it's bent or tipped over, it needs to be removed or replaced.
So we can regulate like the
litter.
littering aspect of it, and you can't obstruct things. We just, I guess if you want to have your political sign out, and the property owner decides to let you have it in their fence for a year, you can do it.
The public hearing is also still open, so.
So is there anyone else that would like to approach and speak? All right, then I'm going to go ahead and close the public hearing and open it up to the commission, unless there is anyone online.
Oh, no. Nope.
Okay, I'm going to open it up to the commission for discussion, and let's do that now.
So I had a couple questions, and I think we've answered them, but just want a clarification. Temporary signs we mentioned, like welcome homes, birthday parties, as long as they're within the size, it's not an issue. But if they're not, it's kind of that, as I understood it, if someone complains that the city takes the day to get there, it's not going to be an issue. So my concern is we're not going to infringe on someone's right to enjoy their own property with a celebratory sign. And it sounds like we are, but
And technically, like I said, when we put anything that's less than 6 square feet doesn't require a permit or anything, but we do expect you to, take it down within 72 hours of the birthday or event or whatever is happening. But technically, if they want to, by this code, any signage that is larger than the 6 square feet, which on a single-family lot, they would be able to have 12 square feet of signage on the property, or the maximum size is of 12 square feet, then technically they would need a temporary sign permit. But again, the city policy right now is complaint-based, and so if neighbor complains about happy birthday sign in someone's front yard and it is 32 square feet, the city would go, knock on the door, or send a letter. We typically just send a letter
and
first.
a letter, and it is not an issue.
And then it's already taken down, yes.
So that was just, I wanted to clarify that, because nobody wants to break the law, but when was the last time you had somebody ask for a permit to have a birthday sign on their front porch?
Never.
Never, okay.
I totally understand it. The reason why we're coming into this, or it being regulated this way, is because we can't do content-based.
Yeah.
If we could just list anything relating to personal celebrations or anything like that, doesn't require a sign permit, we would, but we can't.
That's where I'm trying to get at, is how do we address that and not take away the people's right? And what I'm hearing is you've exhausted your options. So.
Without it being
Okay.
unconstitutional to say, if yours says this, it's okay, but if yours says this, it's not okay, then
Okay.
that's where it becomes sticky.
I'll leave that one alone. Races, bike races, 5Ks, marathons, those type of things, same type of rule. And where, maybe I'll get to my last question. What is a sign? Because if I have my "Don't Tread on Me" flag, I would call that a sign or a flag. What's the difference between a sign or a flag, and how are you going to enforce that?
So, definition of a sign in our code, can I make it bigger?
And I guess where I'm getting at is if my birthday flag is, as big as Macy's American flag, is that a flag or is that a sign? And I'm a little facetious there, but
We also do have. I thought we have a flag in here too, though. Yeah, I thought we did. If the
there was
computer
so
will
much
work.
stuff you sent me. I read it like, I
I
tried to
know.
read it multiple times, and I got a different thing every time, so.
Oh, it's under windblown signs, which are technically prohibited. Oh, not considered to be a flag, okay.
Yeah.
Well, I do know under our, okay, here 1 second. Actually, this is totally in here. Is it exception? Yes, it is. Any
That's
flag,
just-
pennant,
yeah,
or
exactly.
insignia of any nation, state, city, or other political subdivision is an exemption, or an exception from all the requirements of this chapter. And then these are the event signs where, honestly, if like a community event for a 5K in Highland City came to the city and wanted to put signage, we'd let them based on this section. We would just basically tell them where they can, where they can't put it, what parks we'd be okay with them putting it, and where not.
Kelly, who's the zoning? Are you the zoning administrator?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
We laughed, there's some weird code things about that.
Yeah.
It's
Anyways.
Kelly. So also, to follow up on the question about the flag, so flags of governments, not considered really a sign. Flags of political purposes, we have a specific exemption for political signs that just say, whatever
This-
you want, you got 32 square feet, do whatever signage you want. So
On private.
On your own property, so you can put your flag up. A flag would be considered a sign under this code, but if it's a political message type thing,
It's exempt.
it's exempt. I mean, I don't know how you could,
So
I guess
from
theoretically, you
rainbow
get a
flags
flag
to
that
don't
big on
tread
your
on
property,
me,
but
to
that'd be
Black
pretty.
Lives Matter, to whatever
it.
it is, right?
Whatever you want, and we're not going to even touch it.
Freedom of speech.
Yep.
So we can't limit, if someone wanted to put the Macy's, 30 by 50-foot flag in their front yard, there's no way to.
That would be an advertisement, so we'd consider that an off-premise sign because it's for a commercial
And
purpose.
it's
I
Unless they-
apologize, when I
prohibited.
say Macy's, I'm meaning the Macy's grocery store that has the American flag that's as big as this room.
Oh,
How do we, yeah, I was using that as example. Is there any restrictions on somebody doing something like that?
if they can fit it on their lot,
So they can have a 32-foot flag, but they can't have more than a 12-foot
You're,
sign.
sorry, you're saying flag as in an American
An
flag?
American,
Okay.
German, French, whatever flag you
People
wanna-
leave on missions here and they put flags of the
All over
country
the
their
place.
kids go to.
Yeah.
South Africa.
South Africa, of course.
Yeah,
our
I know
code
we
currently says
regulate
it doesn't apply to those kinds of flags, just period. We don't regulate them.
I guess that's where I'm struggling and where most of my questions were based on is, I get something business, something obviously a business-related type thing, that's pretty clear, but that gray area of political, personal, flag, sign, I don't know how you regulate it any differently or,
I have been trying to figure out a good way of regulating signs since I've been practicing. I haven't found a great way of doing it. And that's, to be perfectly honest, every sign code needs to be updated to become more legal, and it's hard to make it perfect. And most of the time, I just tell cities, use your common sense, and if it seems to have a political message, don't mess with it. That's people's property. They have a right to express themselves. Don't go on there trying to rip down. I've had meetings with citizens complaining about some of their neighbors' flags. I say, no, they can do that. It's not the city's job to step in there. Go yell at them if you like. They're your neighbor, but don't get the city between you and them.
okay.
It's a tough one.
At the beginning of this process, when I told Rob I was going to start working on this code, he was like, yeah. I was like, good.
Well, I'll spare you the rest of my questions because they all kind of
Oh.
get around that same definition of the difference between a flag and a sign. Those feather signs, to me, that's a flag. But what makes it a sign, if I understood correctly, is if it's an advertisement for a service or a good or something like that. But if it was a rainbow flag or some other type of political statement, then it would be a flag and it would be allowed.
And if it is something that is like a group instead of an advertisement, but they're promoting like breast cancer awareness with the pink bow and a big, what do you call it, a blade flag, the beginning of a race or on property or something like that, are those things political? It's not a particular funding or for
I
an
would not
event?
consider that political. I would, like, if they're wanting to do a breast cancer awareness sign, they would have to meet the A-frame and freestanding signage requirements that we have for single-family lots.
And if it is for an event, like a 5K or something like that?
That, if it's on a single-family property, technically it would be an off-premise sign. And so if they want to have something like that advertised, they would have to come to the city as it being a community event.
Okay, thank you.
So I guess one last question, and I think you answered it at the beginning, was why are we doing this? And it's addressing one specific issue that's come up, or were there more than that that you can enlighten me with?
There are a few. Main issue too, we have temporary signs for like residential zones and commercial zones, but our planned development zones are technically mixed use. So we kind of have this big hole as far as regulating any signage in our mixed use zones. And so that makes, this updated code makes it very clear which zones it's applicable to, which is any and all. And then the other issue was just that we could not enforce the code as it existed with setbacks and sizes, et cetera, where like the Ridgeview development couldn't even meet our code where we were trying to apply residential temporary signage to them, even though they're technically not residential. And it just became, okay, we really do got to make this compliable, really.
And then, Kelly, I thought there was another issue, and that is basically bring our code into compliance with that Supreme
Yeah,
Court ruling.
yeah, and looking into it, we realized how many legal issues there were in our code, and so that's how it became basically a complete rewrite.
I
It's the
keep
theme of
saying,
tonight's
I was going to,
codes.
oh, go ahead.
Sorry, no, I didn't mean to interrupt.
You finish.
Oh, I was just making a joke because that's the theme of tonight's thing is we try to do one small fix and
And it
it
becomes,
becomes much bigger.
Yeah, that's really what it is. No, I thought, now you made me forget, so I'll let somebody else go. It'll come back. I know I should have kept it.
Okay, is there anything else that we want to bring up in discussion before the next here? Are we voting on this? I need to pull this up. My thing needs to show. Keeps going to sleep. All right. Okay, so are we making a motion? Can you, you want to change the screen for
yeah,
us?
so this is,
Okay.
if you want to just recommend approval as is, and then I have this motion if you're wanting to propose any specific changes.
Or anything that we'd like to bring to the city council.
Can I ask my last question? Now it came back. Are we going to make anyone non-compliant, recognizing we can't go backwards? I mean, if somebody's already doing something, we pass this, they're grandfathered in, and if I understand it correctly.
If they have
So it-
temporary sign permits, yes, they would be grandfathered in.
But permanent sign type stuff, we're not addressing anything in that.
No, we aren't changing any permanent signs. I think I changed a couple typos in the commercial permanent
I
signage,
think that
but
was it.
other than that,
Yeah, I just remember reading that, but I didn't realize it was just
it's-
grammatical corrections, so, okay, there's no, we're not, that was my question, we're not making anyone non-compliant or changing anything that would affect permanent signs, so, okay,
correct.
I'm good, thank you.
So commissioners, is there anything that you find that you would like to make an exemption or a specification to the city council on this? Then would anyone like to make a motion?
Well, yeah, so as written, from what we discussed, I think, I move that the Planning Commission recommend approval of the proposed amendment to Article 7, signs in the Development Code updating several regulations relating to temporary signage in residential and commercial zones.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
I will second that.
Thank you, Chris. Let's go ahead and vote on that.
Yes,
Yes.
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 Thank you very much for all your work on that, Kelly. Let's go ahead
It was
and,
lots of fun.
yeah, I bet. Let's go ahead and move to number 4
So,
item.
thank you, commissioners. As I indicated earlier, this started as a very small fix. Became a much bigger one, and we're gonna have to rewrite the whole code in the near future anyway. So, basic background is, cities can only require what you have in an ordinance. And regarding the construction of public improvements, state law says developers, you can only sell lots and get building permits for like a new subdivision if you either do all the public improvements, you do all the roads, the utilities, whatever, and you complete all of that, then you can sell the lot. Or the colloquial term is bond. We don't actually allow bonds, but you bond for it. You put up some kind of financial assurance saying, we will complete it all. And how we handle that is the purpose of this amendment. As I said, we only can require what's in our code. A lot of developers started asking, well, can we give you a 6-month assurance? And we said, no, that doesn't cover the time that we might need for you to finish your public improvements. And they said, where in your code does it say you can require it longer? We said, it's not spelled out very clearly. So we decided to fix that. And then we started looking at it and realized we needed to fix a lot of things. So This is regarding assurances. We have two types, the improvement completion assurance, or what our code calls the performance guarantee. It guarantees that they will perform, meaning they will complete the improvements. It's 100% of the estimated cost of construction. Separate from that, but provided at the same time, is the improvement warranty assurance. And that is 10% of the total cost. That lasts for a year after the city accepts it. So then we do a final inspection, about 11 months after, to make sure the sidewalks didn't fall apart, the roads are still in decent condition. If they haven't, we say fix it, and if they don't fix it, we use the money to fix it ourselves. The code, as it was written, I guess we move on to the next one, talked about bonds, assurances, guarantees, retainage, and used that all interchangeably and referred to it all as kind of one thing, and it was very confusing how it was supposed to be written. So we tried to fix that, and I think we got to a good point of making it better. And talking with Andy, the city engineer, he says we probably need to kind of overhaul all of this because there's different sections relating to different kinds of developments, and it doesn't really make a lot of sense why we do it that way. I agree, it's just we had to get to a point of having some kind of code while we work on a longer, larger update. So under our current code, the major thing that we're changing is warranty assurances and the length of the performance guarantee. So performance guarantees, we're trying to make sure that we hold them for at least 2 years from when they give them to us. A lot of developers will come in and try to give us a letter of credit, and banks, this has been a trend I've been seeing the last couple of years, will try to put an expiration date on that 6 months, a year in. And if the city doesn't say on top of it, our bond, our guarantee that they will complete improvements expires while they're still working on a development. And that's bad, because if they walk away, we have no way of finishing the roads. The other question is, how do we handle the warranty, that 10%? Currently under code, it's the same type of assurance as the performance guarantee, meaning you can provide us a letter of credit for 110%, or 2 letter of credits, 100%, 10%, or you do a cash bond. And Andy says it's better if we can just have the warranty part be cash, because that really makes sure the developers are attentive to make sure it holds up. We don't have to fight with the bank to get the money, it's just there. So, in this code amendment, sorry, what? We clarify the language to talk about assurances, performance guarantees, and warranty assurances, so it's clear what we're actually talking about. We require the warranty assurance that 10% that's held after the improvements to be completed are going to be a cash escrow deposit. They actually have cash in hand, it's deposited in a bank, we know it's there, they prove it to us. That warranty insurance is provided with the completion insurance right at the beginning, and it's held the entire time. I also remember that as-built plan text amendment. We clarified this to refer back to that as well, to make sure those tie together, because you can't release your performance guarantee until you give us your as-built plan. So we just correlated those two. We have the 2-year term for the completion assurance. We really clarify that.
Rob, can I ask a quick question?
Yes.
So we're talking about like when the last developer came a couple months ago, and, well, this is kind of what it's going to look like, but not really what it's going to look like when they gave us all the
Yes.
different versions of their thoughts. So this kind of nails it down, and nothing is done until we have the final.
And we hold their money. They're
Right.
100%, there is a partial release system as they complete things, but we hold their money until they give us the plans that say, this is exactly how we built it, and we built it to your specifications, and you have inspected and approved it. So really, once we release the money, there's very little we can do about it. So we've also had some, I've been in negotiations with developers where they tried to have their bank have terms in the agreements regarding the letter of credit where they say the bank gets to check whether they get to release the money, and I can say, no, if we ask for it, you give it to us. That's it. So we don't negotiate it. So we're putting that into our code that you don't get to control this money. We have a partial release procedure, so that 100%, the whole estimated cost, as they build out, they can ask the city to release the money we're holding in a percentage for those improvements. So it's related to, you've built all of your streets, and you've done all of these sidewalks and your utilities for half of the plat, you can release a certain amount of the money because those improvements are now completed. We don't need to hold money for it. So we have that in there. And then we beefed up our enforcement procedures to make it clear that we will hold building permits or other approvals to the extent we're allowed under state law if your performance guarantee lapses or expires and we didn't approve that, we say, give us another one, or we're going to hold you up. So that's the change in a nutshell. It's a lot of changes. A lot of them are mostly typos that are just saying bond to assurance or retainage to warranty assurance, and trying to clarify that. But if you have any questions, please let me know and I'll be happy to explain it.
Thank you very much. Rob, I'm going to open this, do I need to open this up for a public
Also a
meeting?
public hearing.
Okay. So I'm opening this up to a public hearing. If anyone has any comment or questions, please come to the mic and state your name and address, and you have 3 minutes. And there is no one online. Okay, I'm going to close the public hearing and open it up for the Planning Commission to discuss and ask any other questions you might have for clarification.
Okay, so I've got a couple of questions. So let's use an example. If the construction cost is $100, that $100 would be the performance guarantee, and you'd have $10 as the warranty assurance.
Correct.
Kelly and I were chatting about this a few days ago, and is it still correct that there are 2 ways for the developer to proceed? One way is they don't plat it or record it or sell anything. They pay for the construction cost, it's completed, and then in effect, they don't need to provide that $100.
Correct.
The alternate option is it gets approved, final plat approval is given, you scurry down to the county, record it, and start selling it like hotcakes. But prior to being able to sell it, you have to give the city access to the $100.
Correct.
Is my understanding correct?
Yes.
And then over time, as you complete the construction, you get that $100 back.
Yep.
Okay, but in both scenarios, $10 is parked in an escrow account for 2 years.
At least 2 years. So the $100 is the one we're saying that has to be in place for at least 2 years.
Yes.
If you finish early, great, you get it back. But that was the part where we're having questions from developers saying, well, can we just give it to you for 1 year? We said, what if it takes longer than 1 year for you to build all your roads? They said, we'll give you another one.
Yeah.
But it always falls on the city then to ask for it, and we have enough to keep track of, and if we let it go, so we're saying always 2 years for that $100. That $10, you provide it with the 100 right up front.
Yep.
It lasts the whole time, so that same 2 years plus the additional year after it's accepted.
Okay, so let me use different words. So upon the conclusion of inspected, approved construction, it still is just a 12-month period
Correct.
subsequent to that. Okay.
Yep.
Thank you very much.
And then we do a final inspection towards the end of that 12 months to make sure everything's still looking good, not cracking, not falling apart. And then we'll, at the end of that, release that $10 back to the developer.
So I have a question, and I'm not, well, I suppose I am being critical as a citizen. So we drive around some of these new developments, and you see all of these crazy dings in the road or subsidence where they haven't compacted it properly. Is that just a case of either, and I'm not casting aspersion on anybody, but we as a city have either not done our job and inspected it properly, or it looked shipshape, but then on the 13th month or the 14th month, suddenly there's deterioration in the road or the curbing or whatever it is.
It's one of those two. Either
Okay.
we missed it or it fell apart right after the warranty was gone, and now it's just the city's cost to fix.
Okay, all right. And in cases like that, we just bear the burden as taxpayers, where if something is wrong, we just got to fix it, and it's part of our maintenance budget and all that sort of stuff.
Correct. There
Okay.
is a limited exception in the code where we can extend that warranty period. It normally is only 12 months. We can go out to 24, so 2 years, if we know we have a developer who has poor performance in the past and there's soil issues. But it's a really narrow exception. We have to have kind of a lot of justification why we can go out there under state law. So I've actually never seen us do that before in any city I work with. But
So you asked all my questions, so thank you. Only other piece I was going to add to that is I thought I heard you say something about the as-bills that we discussed in a previous meeting. Is the warranty or the 10% at the end tied to as-bills, and that's when the warranty starts?
yes, that's one of the clarifications we made is you can't go into that warranty period until you've given us your plans as built per city specs. We won't start that 12-month clock until then. So if they want to wait for 6 months to get us as-built plans, we say, great, your warranty period starts now.
Okay, you have an advantage over me. I'm not a builder. What does as-built mean?
Those are the plans where we say, okay, you said you put utility lines in the road, and you gave us a general cross-section of how that would look. You actually have to GPS and mark out where those lines actually were located. So when we go to dig in the future, especially when it's over private property,
Oh, yes,
we know
okay.
exactly where, as built, we know your construction plan said here. Where did you actually put the line? So when we go to dig in the future, or someone calls blue stakes, they know, okay, it should be right here where the thing is.
Okay, because it may be that it's a foot off
Maybe
to
that
the
they
side
had to shift it
or
over a little
something.
bit.
Okay.
Some things happen in the field. It doesn't quite line up to what they said they were going to do. So that's why we say as built, you take your construction plans, you update them. We need that before we'll let you go into warranty.
Okay, thank you very much, and appreciate all the explanations, too. So, commissioners, are we ready to make a recommendation? Okay.
I move that the Planning Commission recommend approval of the proposed amendments to Chapter 6 of the Development Code related to the duration and term of performance and warranty bonds for developments.
I seconded. Let's vote on that.
Yes?
Yes.
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 Thank you very much. All right. I'm going to go back here. All right. Planning Commission and staff communication items. It says Planning Commission may discuss and receive updates. Future meetings is March 7th for City Council at 7, March 21st at 7. Planning Commission is March 28th at 7, and April 18th is the City Council. Is there anything else that we need to be aware of, Kelly?
Legislative session ends this week, and fun things are coming. Some changes to your powers, actually. More to you. So look forward to
Really?
that.
Okay. And we'll probably hear more about the housing crackdown. All right.
Yeah,
All right.
did I hear, maybe this is out of scope in the meeting, but Rob, am I reading that Park City is sort of pushing back on the state requirements for moderate income housing that we went over last time?
They and many other cities are trying.
Okay. All
So,
right.
I just had one more question. I didn't want Kelly to leave before 7 o'clock, so I have a list of questions that I wanted to ask. No. 8 o'clock, 8 o'clock. No, seriously, what we did tonight was really good. Do you have something coming up in the next few months that's this big? Could you give me some heads up? It is so hard to get through this volume of stuff and come with an educated understanding. Is there anything in the works?
Outside of, well, this one that Rob just pointed out, obviously for the bonding and stuff, we're gonna have to do a comprehensive rewrite. As far as text amendments, no, we do have a couple that we need to work on, but it's more just like clarifications or small holes that we found. I apologize about not giving y'all more of a heads up on this one. It was one that took me a really long time in that I spent a week on it and then didn't get to touch it for 3 weeks and then spent another week on it and had to get a lot of input from a lot of different people and
Once you
do a
found
lot of
out
research.
that case, I'm sure that opened it up for a whole nother deal. So
Yeah, I
thank
was
you
like,
for
well,
doing the research for the
Here's
city.
another 3 months.
Hey, Kelly, just a point we noticed, it's a small issue, but you, on the 1 acre, 1 to 5, 5 acre, it was, the sign you put in was greater than 1 acre when it should have been less than, just a correction.
Oh, my goodness.
So if you notice that.
Thank
So
you.
it's greater than 1, 1 to 5, greater, or 5 or greater, whatever. So the sign is incorrect, just for,
Knew what you meant, but
Oh, my gosh. Okay.
Kelly, we call it, where I come from, the crocodile mouth. If the crocodile's going to eat you,
You gotta go back to middle school, huh?
several of us knows, we were going to mention it, and I forgot to, but. that
No,
needs to be
thank
corrected.
you so much for pointing that out.
I also do apologize that the performance guarantee one became such a big thing. I wrote the first code amendment, and we changed 3 sections, and I took it to Andy, and he had comments, and I was like, you're touching every section in this, okay. And then I rewrote it, so we should try to get that to you, so you have a little more advanced notice of that. It is a lot to try to digest.
I agree, it's great work, it's just,
It's a lot.
it's a
I know.
lot. And if you're starting on something and it's gonna take you a month, could we get like a preview and then I can come visit you during the week or something just to get caught up is all,
Fair.
so.
yeah, even just an email saying this one's going to be a heavy one. If any of you guys have any questions about this, that would be awesome.
And maybe we could even participate or help.
Fair. I will work on that. I know you've asked that before, and I remembered it with the moderate income housing one, and then this one, it just totally slipped my mind.
Thank you for all your work.
No,
It is a
You did
ton.
great.
All right. Make a motion to adjourn the meeting. Anyone?
Second.
Oh, I wasn't.
third,
making-
Oh, I thought you
fourth,
said you made a
fifth,
motion.
done. Let's get out of here. Yes.
I make a motion to end the meeting.
Second.
It's seconded, we vote?
Aye.
Yes, yes.
Aye.
Aye. All right, thank you very much, and thank you for coming. It's nice to have people